Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Doors Update News, the only place where you can learn about the upcoming features for Doors in an unnecessary amount of detail. Today's video is going to be pretty exciting as we'll be going over every single entity which may appear in the very next update or a future one. You see, the developers recently confirmed that a whole bunch of scrapped content is going to be reintroduced into the game, and likely due to this is going to be the implementation of scrapped entities, and there are a lot of them. Most of these entities have been discussed on this channel before, however, some of them are actually pretty obscure. So with all of that being said, let's begin. Alright, so the first entity I want to discuss is the most likely to come to the game, and that is due to how they are the only entry on this list who wasn't originally scrapped. This is the Snare Boss, a mysterious giant vine which has been popping up around the game. The developers as well as El Goblino both have pointed out that this entity is extremely important. Many people theorize that this vine is in fact a part of Snare too, given how Snare was confirmed to be a single giant entity made up of an interconnecting series of vines and traps. I theorize that this entity is solely responsible for the vegetation infestation in the mines, meaning this creature is likely extremely powerful. As for gameplay mechanics, there isn't a lot to go off of, and this is a common justification throughout this video, as the information we have about these entities is very limited. Although, given how the Snare Boss is a plant, it only makes sense if we can assume that this entity will appear in the new garden subfloor that will be added. And if you're confused about what that is, I made a playlist with videos explaining the whole thing, so check that out. Now, when we do in fact come face to face with this boss, it's likely they won't just be a singular giant vine. So, the entity itself would likely just be a large clump of vines, or a series of vines which connect to a single giant being, albeit which of these two options is true is unknown. Still, this entity is the most likely to be added to the game, given how it wasn't scrapped and how it's being developed as a threat, albeit rather slowly. Still on the topic of plants though, the next entity I'd like to discuss was actually scrapped ever since the game was first released, and that is the flytrap. Now, for most of the next entities we discuss, we only receive the meshes of them, meaning these colorless models are all we have to gather information from. Still, given how the flytrap is a plant, if it ever was implemented, it would likely be present in the garden subfloor, given how that whole area is based on plant life. Now, something interesting about the flytrap is I theorized that it's possible that it is actually that central being of the Snare Boss I mentioned earlier, given how similar snares and flytraps are, as they are both killer plants. Still, that is entirely speculation, and even if the flytrap was just a normal entity, it would probably bite you or something. Moving on, the next two entities go hand in hand, kind of. They, much like the flytrap, have also been scrapped since the game's initial release, so the chances of them actually being implemented may be low. These entities are the Groundskeeper and... Oh god. No. Not again. It's the horse! Now, I'm fine talking about the Groundskeeper, but this stupid horse is literally the heat death of the universe. This game doesn't even have real animals. Why is a horse here? It makes no sense. But I guess we have to talk about them. The Groundskeeper is a ghost-like humanoid scarecrow thing that wields a scythe. The horse is, well, a stupid horse. That's literally it. It has no importance to anything and shouldn't even be mentioned in this video. But I guess we will continue. Now, given the meaning of the word groundskeeper, that being a person who maintains the nature around a building or property, it's possible that the groundskeeper would also appear in the garden subfloor. However, others claim that the entity would appear in floor 3 and they would ride the horse, like a headless horseman type of character. Now, another popular theory I've seen regarding this stupid horse is that it would be part of the Seek Chase in floor 3. Essentially, the Seek Chase in floor 2, as you all may know, has a section where the player rides a minecart. So, some people theorize that instead of the groundskeeper riding the horse, the players would ride it instead, likely during the Floor 3 Seek Chase. This could further be proven by how Floor 3 will take place in a castle, and given how prestigious horses are, which this one isn't, they are typically associated with royalty in castles. Still, given how both the horse and the groundskeeper are such old entities, we can't get too much conclusive evidence just from their models. Moving on, let's talk about entities which aren't as old as the ones we just discussed. The next one is one of my favorite leaked entities, given their potential lore connections to Figure. This is Abraham Lincoln, a tall lanky humanoid with claws for hands and feet as well as several holes in their body. They also have a top hat, although it's implied it won't be included when the entity does get officially implemented, as it is very unfitting for the character. Now, I've actually made a lore video going over this guy where I state it's possible this creature is actually related to Figure, given its similarities to the entity. So it's possible that when Abraham does get added, they'd look something like this, having the same textures and colors as Figure. Additionally, Abraham actually appears to be based on Figure's old models, so that is another piece of evidence which could connect the two characters. Next up, we have Wade. This creature is actually the most recent entity to have been scrapped, as based on when its assets were created, it appears to have been intended to be released when Floor 2 came out. Similar to the Gloombats, Wade appears to be a hybrid between two animals, those being a slug and an alligator. Now, given how Wade means to walk through a liquid, such as water, as well as how one of the creatures that make up this entity is amphibious, it's likely this entity would spawn in aqueous environments, such as the flooded rooms seen in the mines. Other than that, Wade's other mechanics are unknown. Maybe you'd have to maneuver around them in the water or something, I'm not really sure. Lastly, the final entity that we know may be added to the game was never covered on this channel, unlike the previous ones, and that is because it is very strange. This is Elma, a ghost-like purple creature that resembles entities such as the Lookman and Shadow. Now, given how the assets for this entity were leaked right when the backdoor update was developed, it's possible that this was an early version of the Lookman. However, given this creature's major differences from the Lookman, such as how it has tentacles, it's possible that both were two separate entities. Now, Elma is unique from the Lookman and Shadow in the sense that it actually has 4 frames, meaning there are 4 versions of this entity. Now, to my knowledge, there are 2 main reasons why this entity might have 4 variations of itself. 1, 3 of these versions are prototypes of the entity and they won't appear in-game, or 2, these versions of the entity are actually frames of animation. If you don't know, by alternating different decal images within Roblox, it can look like an image is animated. It functions similar to a flipbook. So I think that Elma was actually going to have animations where it wriggles around or something, which would be pretty cool. So, to summarize, the new entities which have a possibility of being added to doors in the next updates are the Snare Boss, aka the Vine, the Flytrap, the Groundskeeper, the Horse, Abraham Lincoln, Wade, and Elma. Truly an odd cast of characters, but hey, I'm not complaining as they all look pretty cool. As for the mechanics of these entities, I'm not too sure, as all we can do right now is speculate based on their designs, and even then, a lot of these creatures' models don't tell us a lot. Either way, I'm excited for these new entities to potentially be added to the game. So, let me know in the comments what your predictions are over these creatures, and with all of that being said, thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.